if you've been dieting for a while and you've been trying to lose that stubborn belly fat and you've been trying to achieve an aesthetic physique and you're having a hard time doing it, I'm gonna share with you my 5 ways that I was able to obtain and achieve an attractive and aesthetic physique. So hopefully these tips can help you do what I done. So if that sounds good, stick around to the end of the video. I'm gonna share with you my ways that I was able to strip off all the belly fat and keep it off. So the first one I'm gonna share with you is reducing cortisol. Now, some people have the wrong idea of cortisol. They think it's completely bad, which isn't entirely true. You do need cortisol to function normally. But what is bad is having excessively high cortisol levels, because excessively high cortisol levels can affect your body's ability to actually lose weight and stay in a deficit for a sustained period of time, which is what you need to do in order to lose weight. So you'll find that if your cortisol is high, you'll find you'll probably hold on to a lot of water weight, and this can mess with the scale a lot. So a lot of people think that they're not losing weight or their diet's not working, which isn't actually the case. They just have high cortisol, which is causing their body to hold on to a lot of water weight, and this is affecting the scale. So people a lot of the time will think that it's not working and they need to change something, when actually it's just their cortisol levels are high. Another way your cortisol can be quite high is if you're crash dieting. So if you're reducing your calories down to, say, 1500, if you're a fully grown man, which is way too low, then you're going to find it hard to stick to a calorie deficit for a long period of time, because your body is going to be under so much stress, it's going to start fighting back. So you don't want to crash diet. When you want to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, you want to be in a moderate calorie deficit of about 300 to 500 calories below maintenance. If you're crashing your calories to 1200, 1500, whatever it may be, that's extremely low. Like I said, you're going to cause your cortisol to spike, and you're actually going to make dieting a lot harder. Another reason why your cortisol might be high is if you're cutting down on carbohydrates too low. If you keep carbohydrates too low, again, your body needs carbohydrates for fuel for workouts, to help you recover. So if you cut your carbohydrates too low, you'll find it will probably affect your sleep quality, it will affect your recovery, and you'll put your body under a lot of stress, because your body needs carbohydrates as building blocks to help you in and after the gym. So don't cut your carbohydrates. Things you can do to help your cortisol and to reduce stress levels is by getting enough sleep. I would recommend people to get 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. I don't like saying to people to get 7 hours of sleep, because normally if you aim for 7, you're probably going to get less than that. So I say to aim for 7.5 at the minimum, which will then hopefully allow you to get your minimum of 7 hours sleep that you need. So I would recommend 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. The more you can get, the better, because the better your recovery will be, the better your hormones will be, so you won't be craving a lot of food, so your ghrelin will be under control, which is what causes you to feel hungry. So that can be a great way to reduce your stress levels and to keep cortisol under control. Another way can, like I said, can be making sure you're eating enough carbohydrates. Make sure you're eating enough carbohydrates to allow your body to repair, because this will also reduce stress. Another way to reduce cortisol and to reduce stress is by allowing your body to recover. You need to allow your body to recover. If you don't allow your body to recover, again, you're going to put your body under a lot of stress. So you should be having a minimum of 2 days off. I myself have 3 days off a week from training, weight training. I train 4 times a week. So recovery is just important as training. So you need to make sure you are training. Make sure you're training, but also make sure you are resting and allowing your body to recover. Because if you, like I said, if you don't allow your body to recover, you're going to put yourself under a lot of stress and it's going to increase cortisol levels. So rest and recovery are probably one of the most important things when it comes to trying to control your cortisol levels, and to actually reduce stress. And like I said, if you want to maintain a calorie deficit for a sustained period of time, you can't be crash dieting. You need a sufficient amount of calories to be able to maintain your cut for a longer period of time and to not increase your cortisol levels too high to the point where your body is under so much stress that you're just going to end up quitting, giving up, and you'll go back to, whatever it was you eating that was keeping you fat. So make sure you keep your stress under control. Is very important. The next tip I'm going to share with you is having a complete lifestyle shift. And I think this is one of the biggest tips, because a lot of people, when they go to lose weight, they say to themselves, I'm going to get on a diet, right? But I don't like calling it a diet. I like calling it a lifestyle change, because if you call it a diet, it has a start and an end date. And you don't want it to have an end date, because that means if you have an end date, once you get to that goal, you're then just going to put all that weight back on. So you need a complete lifestyle change. You really need to sit down, self-analyze and reflect on all your bad habits. If you have a bad relationship with food, you need to fix that. If you don't get enough exercise and you don't get your steps in, you need to fix that. Yeah, if you don't get enough sleep, again, you need to fix that. You need to really sit down, self-analyze and work out what it is that you are doing wrong. Right? Because getting in shape is actually very simple. If you're getting enough rest, if you're eating the right amount of calories to make sure you're in a 300 to 500 calorie deficit, if you're weight training a minimum of 3 to 4 times a week and you're eating all the right foods, you should be getting into very good shape, better than the average person if you're doing all those things correctly. So that is why I say you need a lifestyle change. You need a shift in your lifestyle. Don't call it a diet, call it a lifestyle shift, because that is one of the things that will help you get in shape and stay in shape. A lot of people can get in shape, but they find it hard to stay in shape. And one of that reasons is because they call it a diet, they go on it and then they come off it. You need a lifestyle shift. You need to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to change my bad habits. I'm going to have a better relationship with food and I'm going to be disciplined. So you don't want to have gluttony and just eat all these bad foods all the time because you're an emotional eater, right? You want to treat yourself every once in a while. Absolutely. That's one of life's enjoyments, but you need to have the discipline to not be binge eating all the time and actually track your food and get your macros in. So that's the second tip. The third tip would be intermittent fasting. Now, a lot of people praise intermittent fasting, and it is very good. It is very good. But it's not a magic thing that if you just fast, you're just gonna lose loads of weight and that's it. It does work. Intermittent fasting does work, but you also need to be careful with intermittent fasting or fasting in general. If you're doing it for a long period of time, you need to be careful with it, because it's not something you want to do for a long period of time if you've never fasted before. So that's why I recommend to people, if you are starting out and you want to try fasting, you should do a 16-hour fast followed by an 8-hour eating window. So whatever time you need to work out what time you stop eating in the evening. I would always recommend doing your fasting period whilst you're sleeping too, so it makes it a lot easier. So then by the time you've woken up, you've already fasted for 8 hours, and then you can continue fasting for the rest of the day, and then maybe start eating at 12 o'clock and finish at 8. So if you finish eating at 8 o'clock in the evening, then you can start eating again at 12 o'clock the next day, which is very doable for a lot of people. You know, some people, they only eat once a day and they find it helps them a lot with weight loss. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is being in a calorie deficit. Whether you intermittent fast or not, providing you're in a calorie deficit, you will still lose weight. So that is the most important thing. But fasting can help you stay in a calorie deficit because you're moving your first meal of the day to later in the day. So it enables you to actually eat less calories, right? So you want to be able to eat less calories and be able to maintain that for a sustained period of time. So intermittent fasting can be a great way to lose weight. The third tip would be, is that the third tip? No, this is the fourth tip. The fourth tip would be eating high satiety foods. So high satiety foods, if you don't know what they are, they're foods that are very essentially whole foods that are high in fiber and have a lot of volume, right? So, things like oats, chicken, eggs, sweet potatoes, all these foods are very high satiety foods, which means they're going to make you feel fuller for longer. So if you're trying to lose weight, but you're still eating silly stuff like cakes, cookies, biscuits, you name it, you're going to struggle to stay in a deficit because these types of foods aren't going to make you feel full for very long. So you're going to feel hungry a lot of the time. Whereas if you're eating foods that are high satiety foods, like I just mentioned, essentially whole foods, you're going to find it a lot easier to stay in a deficit, right? It's not just about the fact that these foods are better for you. They make losing weight a lot easier because they help keep you full for longer. So the fact that they help keep you full for longer, you're going to find it a lot easier to maintain your deficit for a longer period of time. As I said, if you're someone that wants to eat cookies, sweets, chocolate, these foods are very high in calories. They're very, very high in calories, but they're low satiety, which means they don't make you feel full, right? So, for example, if you compare 300 grams of sweet potatoes compared to 300 grams of McDonald's fries, right? Those sweet potatoes will make you feel very full compared to McDonald's fries, which are probably 500, 600 maybe in calories, and you will eat them and still feel hungry, whereas you'll eat the sweet potato and you'll feel a lot fuller for a lot longer, right? So this is why it's important to eat high satiety foods. It's not just about the fact that they are better for you. Of course they are better for you and they are better for your body, but they help you stay full, which is what you want. When you're restricting your calories, you want to eat foods that are going to help you feel full, that are very voluminous, because your body signals you're full when you consume a large volume of food. And these high satiety foods, you can eat a lot more of it and still maintain a calorie deficit because they're so voluminous, right? So that is extremely important. And my last tip for you is increasing your daily expenditure. So what I mean by that is, if you're someone who maybe works an office job or even works at home, for example, you're probably not getting a lot of steps in if you don't go out a lot. You're probably maybe within the 2,000 to 4,000 range, which is probably for the average population at the minute because everyone is so lazy. If that is you, you need to start increasing your daily expenditure. The ideal range would be 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day. But if you're currently at a very low step count, I would just increase it by at least another 2,000 each day. And you will find this will help again with your cut. You don't need to do anything. You don't need any rigorous activities. You don't need to start going on runs and doing like crazy stuff to help you burn more calories. Just something light, because especially if you're a man and you're trying to get lean and you want an attractive physique, you want your muscle retention to be as high as possible. So you don't need to go crazy with cardio. The only cardio I do is walking, right? If you really care about your cardiovascular health, of course you can incorporate some running into there, but I wouldn't go too excessive, especially if you're trying to retain as much muscle as possible. You don't want to go crazy with cardio, because your muscle retention when you're on a cut is very, very important. So like I said, ideally you want 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day. If you can do that each day, then even on rest days, you should still be getting your steps in. But like I said, if your steps are very low already, then just increase them by 2,000, because being in a deficit, right, and if you're getting your steps in as well, it will also allow you to eat a little bit more food, which again will make your cut more sustainable, right? That doesn't mean that if you weight train and get your steps in, it just grants you permission to eat what you want and eat a load of food. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what getting your steps in will do is it will burn more calories, which will allow you to eat a little bit more than you normally would without getting your steps in, and still maintain a deficit, which is why it can be such a plus when you're trying to cut. Because a lot of people don't realize that I don't think a lot of people grasp how long they actually need to cut for. They think, oh yeah, after 4 to 8 weeks, I'll be where I want to be. But in reality, it's more like 12 to 16, sometimes even longer, depending on how much fat you have to lose. So those are my tips on what helped me. Stay locked in.